All right, you guys, thank you so much. You guys know how we do. This is Michelle Gines and the Reimagine U Lab podcast. I am MG, your Reimagine strategist, and you never know who is coming in the lab with me today. But I'm telling you, we've got one of the big dogs out of Philadelphia in here with us today, and I'm so glad that he's here. Attorney David Henley. How are you, David?
I'm fantastic, Michelle. Thank you so much. This is just fantastic to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you had the time available within your schedule. Took us a minute to get here, but I'm glad that we are here. So, actually, David, is it cold in Philly right now? What's the weather like?
Actually, the sun is out today and it is about 54 degrees. It's really nice. The time that we've been here, and I've been out here in this area, my Ruthie and I, since June of last year.
Mhm.
Last winter was a very mild winter. Folks said that was so unusual. This year, it's been a mild winter so far. So we're hoping that will continue.
Yeah, we hope that will continue. I always love it to hear about what the weather and stuff is like in different areas, especially when it's starting to get around the holiday time, because this is the time that most people are traveling. And I'm glad to hear that it's mild right now, and hopefully it stays that way and throughout the holiday season on into the winter. Well,
I grew up in areas where we got a lot of snow. I was living in Kansas when I grew up, and then my Ruthie from Minnesota, and I met her on business trips up in Minnesota, and so she's certainly very familiar with winter and snow. And I keep telling her she has really gotten soft, because as soon as it gets below 40 degrees, she's starting to make comments about it. But yeah, we enjoy it, but it can get in the way sometimes.
no, you know what? I like Minnesota too, but I don't like it in the wintertime. So man. So you and Ruthie, I met in Minnesota. Oh, what? That's wonderful, David. I don't even think I knew that. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and actually, not to go into a whole lot of detail, but
Yeah.
what actually happened was I was working for the Missouri Department of Insurance. I had
Mhm.
3 different assignments to do some auditing of some companies. All
Mhm.
3 of those companies were in Minnesota back to back. I met my Ruthie while I was up there, which, by the way, my Ruthie is the proverbial farmer's daughter.
Is that right?
That's right. She grew up on a farm out in Minnesota. And
Okay.
after I met her, we started thinking maybe there's something going on here, because the third company that I ended up doing an audit of was in her hometown where her brother worked. And so
Really?
we just thought the stars must be aligning. It was a very cold, harsh winter up in Minnesota when we met, and we decided to keep it going long distance, and finally decided to go ahead and get married.
Oh wow. That's you know what? I love stories like that. How long have you been married now?
27 years.
27. That's
Yes.
a good long time,
It,
David.
it, it is. And it's been enjoyable every moment.
I love that. Me and Brad, this was 25 years for us this year. So we right behind you guys.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you know what? So thinking about, like I always invite folks to come into the lab, and we're going to talk about some change when we're in here. And when you think about, we were talking before we came on, and you were telling me about all the different places that you've lived, right? So you told me Oklahoma and Kansas.
Born in Oklahoma, grew up in Kansas.
Okay, Nebraska. I'm trying to see if I'm
Yes.
Nebraska,
Nebraska.
Missouri,
Yes.
Kentucky,
Yes.
Louisiana, and you're
Yes.
in Pennsylvania now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So David, so let's start there. When you think about, because I know there's some people, and you just said that Ruthie is the proverbial farmer's daughter, and she's moved. Because if you've moved a few times, she's probably moved with you, right? In
Right.
27 years.
Right.
But a lot of times people don't think about, like leaving their hometown. So like when you first moved, when was your first move? How old were you?
Let's see. My dad was stationed in the military. So he was stationed in Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is near Alexandria. And so I started first grade there, and I started about 5, 6 years old there in Louisiana. And then he ended up getting transferred to Fort Riley up in Kansas, and so we ended up going up there. And so I was in fourth grade. So what's that? Maybe about 10 or so, I guess.
Yeah, like just about, so, 19 years old.
Graduated from high school there in Kansas, and then went to school back down in Louisiana at LSU.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, that was my transition back down there, and then ended up going to law school in Nebraska. So that's how I ended up in Nebraska for a while.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. And then I went into the JAG Corps. Proudly have my little Army pin on. Yeah, so I was stationed in Missouri at Fort Leonard Wood, and then after getting out, I worked at the Missouri Department of Insurance there in Missouri, lived in St. Louis for several years, and then ended up transferring over to Louisville, Kentucky, and then eventually out here to Philadelphia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, you know what? I think that's amazing. A lot of people, as even as our listeners tune in, I always like to get a pulse check. So if you have moved more than 2 times, I want you to comment in the chat, or not, or comment share something with us in the comments, because a lot of times people are afraid of moving. And so, but you were used to it, because if you come from a military family, then that's one of those things that's a part of, that's like one of the occupational hazards, right? When you're in the military, you're gonna move.
Yeah. I certainly didn't end up in my 4 years moving around a whole lot because of the military, but that certainly is the norm. And my brother was stationed in Germany, and then in Korea, and then in Hawaii. So he moved around quite a bit. But, that's one thing that I've noticed, Michelle, as I got out here to Philadelphia, the number of people who are just native Philadelphians that have lived here all their life and don't want to see themselves living anywhere else. And it really, yeah. And I think that's pretty much the norm. Most people end up living right where they are. And it's a big decision to decide, hey, I'm going to change. To leave from Kansas and go down to the South in Louisiana, that's a big decision. That's a big change. So you have to be willing to say, yeah, I'm willing to take that on and do that.
Yeah. No, you know what? You're absolutely right. So I spent 6 years in the Army Reserves. And so I didn't have to move with the military, because, I was able to do it right here in Missouri. I've moved now, but we moved. The first time that I did have a move was when I went there, and that was after college. So in the early 90s, went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Oh, sure.
Had a lot of friends that ended up leaving, Fort Jackson, and they ended up stationed up in Fort Riley. So I've been to Fort Riley and a few times up on base. But you know what, it's amazing, because like where we live now here in Tampa, like I think that, I don't know what the real statistics are, but 2 out of the 5 people that I meet are native Floridians. Oh. Everybody else is a transplant from somewhere else. Like all the people in our church, all the people that I meet, like just in work and networking things and stuff like that, are typically, they have transplanted from out east, Jersey, or they have moved from, all over really, but people like to come to Florida to live. As a matter of fact, there was, I think it was like a 300% increase in people transporting from wherever they were to Florida last year, just in 2022. So it's amazing. So change is a thing. Like, so that's one. So David, I always ask the question, and you had answered for me, because sometimes the changes that we make come not because it's something that we necessarily want to do, but maybe there's an experience or something that happens in our lives. And so I know the question that I'd asked you was, what was the biggest change that changed you? And you were talking about your mom. You want to kind of share that share that with the listeners right now?
Yeah, certainly. I'd be happy to. I mean, when we talk about change, we talk about it being just about anything that happens. And, you know, people get married, people have the
Mhm.
birth of a child, it may be an illness, it may be a job. In my case, I was 16 and about to go into my senior year in high school, and my mother passed away before my senior year. And
Yeah.
that was certainly impactful for me from the standpoint that, I had grown up in Junction City, Kansas, which is not too far
Mhm.
from Fort Riley. For your listeners who are probably wondering and maybe looking up, where are these places? Fort Riley is where Custer was stationed before he went out west and had his eventful time that happened out there with the Indians. And Fort Riley is probably about 2.5 hours west of Kansas
Mhm.
City. So I lived in a little town called Junction City that's right next to Fort Riley.
Mhm.
About
I've been there.
20,000 people when I lived there. And it's a small town. And I grew up thinking small town and not thinking about branching out. Had she not passed, I probably would not have left Kansas to go to school in Louisiana. I
Really.
really launched me into this point where I said, I want to explore the world. I want to become
Yeah.
independent. I want to see what's out there. And
Mhm.
I had always, we had lived down near there when my father was stationed at Fort Polk, which is near Alexandria, which is in the middle of Louisiana. Uh,
Mhm.
but I watched the LSU Tigers over the years, and I was familiar with that area. I took French in high school, and I was thinking, oh my goodness,
You
I
can
can
use
use
it.
my French when I go down to Louisiana. Little did I know,
Right.
that's totally different. But it's what gave me the impetus to say, why don't I go and do something different? And ended up going to school and Louisiana State University down in Baton Rouge,
Yeah.
down there in the South. And this was, I'm going to date myself a little bit. This was back in the like 70s, 80s.
Okay.
And yeah, a lot of things were still transpiring down in the South. And so it was quite the adventure for me to go down there, but I was willing to do so. And I think, again, that happened because of my mother's passing at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you know what? Sometimes we need to be provoked. Like sometimes there's something that that happens, and we say, okay, hey, so that was the impetus for you. Like you
Yes.
started, and it sounds like, David, in talking to you, that that wasn't the, I mean, like, you made the decision at that time, the first time, that, hey, I'm gonna go to LSU. What made you pick LSU of all the schools?
The football program, I've been watching it for years, and I just thought, oh, okay, how about there?
No, a lot of times that's exactly how it is. I was gonna ask you if you was down there, if you were there during during the Shaq era. Did you ever get to see him play? But you might have been there a little before he got
A
there, huh?
little before Shaq got there, a little bit before.
No, but you know what? I like that, and I like what you said about, hey, I wanted to be something different. I wanted to do something different. So, are you? I imagine that even now you still are doing different things. You still changing. So, as a matter of fact, one of the things that you said to me, I always have fun talking to all the guests before we even hit. I have to push the record button so we don't miss all the good stuff before we get on here for everybody else. But you said something to me about the best piece of advice that you would give somebody else around change. So I want you to share that, because I was like, David, that's good. Like, that's one of those things that I think everybody should take that and make that a mantra. You want to share with them what it is, what it was?
I think at the time, Michelle, I was talking about designing the change, making sure that there are these opportunities where we can say, I'm going to decide what change happens, and really
Yeah.
designing it and really using it as a roadmap for where you want to go from point A to point B, and not being afraid of it. There's always going to be those things that are just going to happen. We're so fearful of sudden change. You know, Change happens all the time, as we've talked about, and people are always dealing with change. But it's the sudden change, the unexpected change that really causes the issues for us. I didn't expect for my mother to pass, especially before I had graduated from high school. And that's the kind of thing that really catches us off guard. But as we think about where we're going next, what we're doing next, we can really design the change, and we can really say, this is what I want to do. This is how I can use that in a good way going forward. So often we think about the negative, the non-positive side of change, when there's this positive side, this opportunity side that we can take advantage of as well.
Yeah, no, I love that, because when you can get creative in it, like you can you can decide. Like I'd say all the time, and you'll hear on this show, and anytime I have an opportunity, change is a choice.
Right.
And you get to make the choice for your change. And I think that it's important, like that, if nothing else, like if you guys have heard nothing else on the show today, it is knowing that, yeah, you can design the change. You can design it. You can, when I talk about reimagine you can reimagine you. Like, that is a real thing. I believe that that's a real concept. It's not like some construct out there in the ethereal. No, you can design change. And so I love when you said that, David. So David, give us an example that you would say where, if somebody is thinking about something, give us an example of a time when you felt like you designed the change in your life, aside from going off to school, because at that time, you were a younger man, student, but here you are now, you're a prominent attorney, have all kinds of knowledge, experience, expertise. You've been there and you've done that, right? So give us an example of, like, now, like, because sometimes people think, well, I'm too old to change. Like I'm stuck in my ways. I'm going to stay here. This is who I am. This is all I'm going to do. What would you say to give somebody an example of when you have made a change that you designed?
Yeah. One of the things that I constantly do, and I know you probably do this as well, is there's a lot of wisdom out there, and I'm always watching various other podcasts, watching videos on YouTube, doing some reading here and there. And one of my favorite people to listen to is John Maxwell.
Oh,
if
yeah.
your listeners out there haven't listened to John Maxwell, he's got a lot of wisdom, and you can find him all over the place. I've got several of his books on my bookshelf. And one of the things he says is this: change is inevitable, growth is optional.
Oh, that's good.
Change is inevitable, growth is optional. So with regard to giving an example of where this has happened, as I was coming out of the military, out of the JAG Corps, I knew that I needed to make some decisions about what's next for me. Where am I going next? And so I was really trying to be thoughtful about where I wanted my career to progress. And I will admit to your listeners that I wish I had done this much earlier in my career, where I was really thinking more thoughtfully about designing my career, not just letting it happen. I ended up coming out of the military and going to the Missouri Department of Insurance, and had these grand ideas of maybe getting outside of Missouri and going somewhere else. But, at the time that I got out, I just sort of fell into, I'll go to the Missouri Department of Insurance. That's easy. I can do that. It wasn't until later that I really started thinking, do I want to stay in insurance? Because that was the first time I'd been exposed to insurance, when I went to the Missouri Department of Insurance.
Yeah.
And what will I do with that going forward? And I really was thoughtful in saying, my next road is going to be as an attorney for Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that's where I'm headed. And that's going to be the start of my career, to start saying, hey, from being a counsel, I can be, an associate general counsel, and then maybe, a managing associate general counsel and a deputy general counsel, and who knows, a general counsel of a company, and really thinking about what does it take to get down that road, because it's a journey, and even though you put those goals out there, you're not necessarily going to reach them because of growth, because you're just going to continue to grow and learn. And no matter where you are, that's happening. And so it was after I got out of the Missouri Department of Insurance and really got over to Anthem that I started really designing and thinking about where am I going to go next. And it really falls in line with one of the things that I had an opportunity to do while I was at Anthem. Our general counsel needed someone on the legal side to be the culture facilitator, the champion for our area. And she selected me, and I became this culture facilitator doing this training all over Anthem with regard to the culture program we wanted to put in place. And that program was with a company called Cindelaney. And maybe some of your listeners out there have heard of it. They're now under the title of Heidrick and Struggles. They're a Heidrick and Struggles company. And their leader basically said this: leaders who have successfully, measurably, and sustainably shaped their cultures know that the culture transformation is a journey, not an event or a series of trainings on how people need to behave and interact. It is a journey that has a destination, but no real endpoint where you can stop and say, I've arrived at my destination and now I can relax.
Oh, I like that, David. You'll have to send that to me.
Absolutely.
Email that to me. No, that's good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I began on this journey of saying, I'm going down this road. I'm going to design and be thoughtful about where I'm going and see opportunity where I can and continue to grow. It's all about growth.
Yeah, that growth is a big piece. And I like what you said, that the CEO there said, leaders that measurably, like actually thinking about, how am I measuring change for myself? How do I measure it? And a lot of times people don't even think about that. But I like this discussion, because when I'm thinking about, people who are listening in, and there's a lot of small business owners that tune into the podcast. There's a lot of, career professionals that listen in, and wherever you are in the spectrum, like you could, get early retirement, just starting out. But that whole design and the change concept right there, David, like that's novel. Like that's what people can do. Like that's the part of it that you can control. Like is taking and drilling down and being able to look at, hey, how do I become, what else can I do in this insurance space, and all of these different paths that you could have gone on and taken it, because nobody's path really is linear. Most of the time it has some waves and some winding roads and different things, but being able to kind of craft, or just taking, stepping back and saying, hey, I want to design the change.
Yeah.
Who thinks like that?
Yeah.
No, I think that's amazing.
And for your listeners out there, what I read was from Larry Senn, Senn. He's the CEO over Heidrick and Struggles, Cindelaney, that put together that whole culture concept. And it really has a broad application outside of just culture transformation. It's what we deal with all the time with change. And I will say this, once you put this, let's say it's a plan together, you're being thoughtful, something's going to get in the way of it. Something's going to happen that's unexpected. And it's really those points at which, we really need to be thoughtful about what do we do next. There's another writer who I've read over the years, and he has these little wonderful books with a lot of tips in it. His name is Dean Del Sesto. Dean Del Sesto, Del and then Sesto. And he has some books that are called Shift Your Thinking. And he goes through in one of them, and he talks about 200 ways to improve your life. And he said this that really resonated with me. I was watching one of his videos just the other day, and he said this: when change happens, be still. Good things happen there.
Ooh.
He says, be still. Good things happen there. Sometimes we have to just slow down for a moment when that unexpected change happens that gets or seemingly gets in the way of this thoughtful plan that we put together, and use that to really think through and again be thoughtful about what's my next step. How do I deal with this? How do I take this on a growth path?
Yeah. No, I like that. That's really good. Be still, because most of the time being still is not that's one of those things that the people got to work on, is being still, especially in a time when it seems like the world is changing, and it has sped up, right? So you find yourself in this whirlwind, this mix, and you trying to do this and that and all these things, and sometimes you do, like, be still. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a real good one. So David, David, in taking that and listening to that, has there been a time when where you have audibly either said to yourself or just in your frame of mind where you've had to just be still?
Yes, absolutely. Whenever you have, for instance, a job change, particularly if it's something that, you didn't expect. And let's say, and this happened to me at one time, where the company just decided, we don't need as many employees as we have. They do a reduction in force.
Yep.
Nothing with regard to performance or something that you may have done or not done. They're just making some business decisions on strategy. And so once that occurs, it was a time for me to be still and really be thoughtful about what's my next step. What am I going to do next?
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting that you say that, because that just happened in our workplace. There were, and it is a strategy, like the companies, they decide, hey, we need to do this. And a lot of them do it pretty regularly, like that. This is a part of, what we need to do, reducing headcount and all that type of thing. And you get blindsided. We had, staff and teams that that happens to, and you see it, and it is like, man, the impact of that sometimes is depending on how you see it and perceive it and run and do that next step, and sometimes that next step is just being still. I think it's so important, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because this is a lot of times with organizations, it happens at inopportune times, like here it is at the end of the year and things like that, but that's a real thing. It is. So I like that, as we start thinking about, those things that people can do. What would you say that people can do in preparation for impact or design and change in their lives? What would you like to say to folks before we end the show today?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. This is a great time of the year because everybody is really sort of starting to think about their goals going to be for going forward. And so they're being thoughtful. And so, number one, I would say, be thankful.
Mm-hmm.
Be thankful for where you are and what you have and how blessed you are today.
Yeah.
We always need to do that before we're thinking about what's next. After you've taken some time to do that, continue that being still by using that to say, okay, let me be thoughtful about what's going to happen going forward. One of the things that I think is the key to my success over the years has really been relationships. The relationship that I have with you, it's been 4 years maybe that we've known each other, and we don't talk every day, but that contact such that I could shoot over an email and say, hey, Michelle, what do you think about this? Because that other piece is those relationships that we have and nurturing those relationships. And when you need somebody to give you feedback, need someone to give you some advice about something, they're there. So build on those relationships as well. And then look at what true change is relative to our habits. So here's something that Larry said again, and give him credit for something that he said. And he said this, he said, lasting change will occur when people let go of existing habits and make personal behavior changes. So if after you have sat still and been thoughtful and said, here's what I want to accomplish in 2024 and beyond, remember that there are these habits we have to build in that are going to help us be successful. I saw a post that you had recently out on LinkedIn, and you were talking about your morning routine.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, that's the way to do it. Maybe you can share that with folks, because I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. You know what? And you have to have, when you said habits, I was like, oh, David, yeah, that's a good one. I hate that we about to run out of time, but oh my God, the habits, what you do is how you design that what's next. You know what I mean? Like your habits are, you know, like you're building in these things that you do. And so David, since the last time, because it's been 4 years since we've met. And it, like last year, even this whole podcast and change and all of that stuff, it's all about, I did some weight loss work, you know, like some getting up in the morning. Part of my routine is getting out of the bed and getting some physical activity in. Now, I told you that I was in the military. So most military folks, they keep up. We did PT in the mornings. That's how we started the day. But if you don't do those, if you put those habits down, you know, listen, it can change the way you look, it can change the way you feel and everything. And so, yeah, like this lasting change, you got to let go of those.
Lasting change will occur when people let go of existing habits and make personal behavior changes.
Personal behavior change. Send that one to me, because I had to do that. And so in the process, and since we last met, I have lost 50 pounds. 50 pounds.
Fantastic.
Like,
congrats.
That's a whole half person. So but that morning morning routine helps me do it. It helps me. It gets me in the right frame of mind. I read in the morning.
Yep.
Because I think that's how you learn and grow. You know, it's all a part of it. And so, yes, I love this. Train your brain.
That's right.
Do something new. David, it has been a pleasure having you on here today. I want to thank you
so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right. So you guys, we have listened in. You have gotten some great things from the David Henley, attorney out there in Pennsylvania, Ambler, Pennsylvania. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, a little suburb of Philadelphia.
Yes. David, I'm so glad you were able to join us. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you who have not hit that subscribe button, make sure that you do. If you got something, all those wonderful quotes that David talked about as he's been on here today, make sure you get those by sharing share this show with a friend, a relative, somebody that you think would get something out of it. And make sure that you hit the bell at the bottom of your screen so that you can get the notification the next time a new show shows up. And you know, we're here every Friday. Love it. You'll get the new season is beginning, and we look forward to having you tune in. So thank you so much. It's been a blessing. David, I will see you the next time. God bless you.
Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure.